Hello, Father Selway. It's a pleasure to be with you here today. I would like to thank you personally for coming to London. I believe you've not been there for some time. We wanted to interview you today because although we can and do listen to your sermons online on the seminary website, many of our listeners have never heard from you or heard about you, and they don't know much about you. So we'd like to catch up and find out a bit more about you.
Well, thank you, Matthew. I'm happy to be here.
First of all, could you tell us where you were from? Because I believe you live in Florida, but I don't know if you're originally from there.
Well, I was born actually in California, Walnut Creek, California, and I moved to Michigan with my family when I was about 10. And the whole reason we moved actually was owing to the Catholic school that was open there with Bishop Sanborn. Bishop Sanborn was running a Catholic school, and my parents thought that it was absolutely necessary that we have a Catholic education. And so it was really owing to the influence of Bishop Sanborn that we moved to Michigan to be raised in this Catholic school, which would give us a Catholic environment with Catholic families. And I went to school in Michigan and attended and did all my years of schooling there. And after which I entered the seminary.
Mm-hmm. Could you talk a little bit about the importance of a Catholic education, a Catholic upbringing? Because a lot of our listeners are perhaps live in areas where they can't get their children to Catholic school, and I know a lot of people personally who homeschool.
Yes.
And how important is it to not allow your children to be influenced by the secular education system?
Well, if my family did not really make the sacrifice to send all of us to the Catholic school, I wouldn't be here now. I could, quite certain. We were, our family was in California, and of course we would have been going to very liberal schools. Mm-hmm. But in my opinion, parents really do not have a choice. That is, in my opinion, parents cannot send their children to public schools, owing to the influence, occasions of sin, and the dangers to faith and morals. Mm-hmm. So I think that parents have an obligation to somehow save their children from going to any public school. Whether they homeschool, whether they send them to some Catholic school, they don't have a choice. I mean, and so much so that if they really couldn't educate them at all, they would have to stay home in order to save their souls. The salvation of the child's soul is the most important thing, and parents must be thoroughly convinced that they can only save their children's souls if they put them in the proper environment. And it has to be a Catholic environment in order to preserve them from any harm to faith and morals.
Mm. I think Bishop Sanborn has said a few times that it would be better that people were selling pencils on the street as Catholics than dying a wealthy pagan.
Correct. Yes, it's very true.
I assume that's a sentiment that you would absolutely 100% endorse.
Yes. Yes.
So, apart from the Catholic education in Michigan, what else was your childhood like? You said you had a Catholic upbringing and a Catholic family. What is that for you? What are the key features of that?
Well, it begins in the home.
Mm-hmm.
It begins in the home, and if the school is only accidental to the Catholic upbringing of the children. So if it's not done in the home, if the home does not have a Catholic environment, the school really cannot bring that about. The school in itself will not do that. So the school is there to help the parents do their job. The parents are the primary educators, and so for us growing up, it was always important that we practice the faith in the home, and we practiced the faith in the home, and that was brought about through a strong prayer life in the home, and also the attachment to the priest. Our family owes its you might say owes its education to very much to Bishop Sanborn, who actually influenced my parents very much in teaching them how to raise the children. And my father always would tell us, it's important that we obey the priest. That is, we must learn as children obedience. And if we follow the priest, and do what he tells us and practice in the home what the priest is telling us to do, the children will be raised properly. And obedience to authority is a very, very important part of Catholic education. Obedience without piety piety without obedience is really, you might say, an empty thing. You can have a lot of piety in the home, but if the children do not learn obedience to the commandments, obedience to authority, it is really it's a fruitless endeavor. And so I would say those bringing all those things together, the obedience to the priest, obedience to the commandments, obedience to authority, and the prayer life in the home, the avoidance of the occasions of sin, that is, making sure that the children are protected from all the occasions that the world offers that would be corrosive to faith or morals. All those things come together to bring about that Catholic environment.
Okay. So, having gone through the home life of having this Catholic upbringing and learning obedience, learning piety, you chose to pursue a vocation.
Yes.
And was that something that happened immediately? Did you consider anything else before you did that, or did you simply finish your education and think that's what I want to do?
Well, it's something I had wanted to do. It's not something that I knew immediately. I had served as an altar boy growing up, and it's something I had always wanted to do. I was attracted even to the religious life, and so after high school, I decided to join the seminary. Again, not knowing if, in fact, that was my vocation. I wasn't sure. Well, I wasn't 100% sure. And so I went to the seminary, and within a year, I knew I was quite convinced that this was for me. And in the seminary, I really was attracted to all of the spiritual life, and so in time, you might say it blossomed, but it was not something I knew right away. It was something that came about with time.
And where was the seminary? Was the seminary in Michigan at that point, or was it in Florida when you joined?
Actually, there was a seminary in Michigan. Bishop Sanborn was running a seminary in Detroit. However, my first year of seminary, was actually in Italy. I attended the seminary in Varua, Savoia, which was operated by the priest of Mater Boni Concilii, and Father Rakosi is the superior. And I spent my first seminary year there, pursuing my studies, beginning with philosophy, and it was a very good experience because I was able to meet, of course, many clergy that were operating in Europe, and of course I was able to get to know Father Rakosa and the priest of the institute, and their system of studies and the way they operate is very much like very similar to Bishop Sanborn Seminary. In fact, I went there at the suggestion of Bishop Sanborn. He thought it would be a good experience, right. And I was very happy that I went there, and it permits me to have contact with all of those priests over there, and to keep, you might say, it's one little thing to help keep the unity yes. among the traditionalists today. Which is important. It does help.
Helps a lot. So you went through the seminary training the first year in Italy, and then you returned to the States?
Yes, I returned to the States. After a year, I returned to attend the seminary that was operated by Bishop Sanborn, Most Holy Trinity Seminary. So I returned to Michigan and completed my studies under Bishop Sanborn.
Right. Okay. And was he the bishop that ordained you, or were you ordained by another bishop?
I was actually ordained by Bishop McKenna, right. And it's December 8th, 2001. So just, I just celebrated my 15th year anniversary.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
So the next question is, I understand that you ran the Queen of All Saints Academy in Brooksville.
Correct. Sure.
But what do your day-to-day duties involve now?
Well, now I am fully occupied in teaching at Most Holy Trinity Seminary, right. in Brooksville. Yes, up to this time, you say for the past, since 2003. Backtrack a little. I mentioned that I completed my studies in Michigan for the seminary. I completed my studies. I was ordained 2001, and after which I went to Florida in 2003, and we opened a school in Brooksville. Mm-hmm. So we opened a school in Brooksville, and I have since been occupied operating the school there in Brooksville, of course under the direction of Bishop Sanborn. I've been assisting with his school there in Brooksville, and I also helped him to set up a school in Phoenix, mm-hmm. Phoenix, Arizona. And so that I have been quite occupied doing that, and I have recently. This past year, I have been more involved with the seminary. Mm-hmm. I teach in the seminary. I am assisting with the philosophy program, right. And that is pretty much now my primary occupation.
Okay. So that's the principal subject you teach is philosophy.
Correct. Yes.
And is that to the more junior seminarians, or is it to all of them across all of the years?
Well, in the seminary, they would begin with their first 3 years would be philosophy. So that would I would be teaching first year seminarians, mm-hmm. and I also teach them some Latin. I do the first year Latin.
Right. Okay. I guess having gone to Italy for a year and now looking after the junior seminarians coming into the seminary. I suppose it would kind of help you from the point of view if you've done. I know the seminary has international seminarians coming from all corners of the world, really. I suppose it helps you to discern what's for people who are settling in, whether they're having just normal jitters, or moving somewhere, living abroad for the first time, perhaps, and because you've been there before. How is it that you can well, the question is, did that year in Italy help you, and so you can remember your experience then, and you can apply it to the seminarians now, and sort of to see how they're getting on?
Yes, my year in Italy was very good in that it, in a certain sense, crystallized my vocation. Mm-hmm. For this reason, that if I were doing it, I had to be doing it for the right reason, which is a requisite for the vocation. The vocation really requires two things: the call of the superior, mm-hmm. and right intention. Yeah. So, going to Italy. Mm-hmm. You might say purified that intention. And I had to make sure I really wanted to do it. Yeah. Of course, you have to leave home. I didn't know the language. The classes were done in Italian and French, and I knew neither. So you're away from home. You don't know the language. And so it was good for my spiritual life. It really crystallized it in that I knew that if this is what I wanted to do, because if I'm going to get through this, right, it has to be for the right intention. And so I continued. I continued there, and after that year, I would say that I really knew that I was quite certain that this was for me. Mm-hmm. So later on, looking back, and when I see new seminarians coming in, especially if they're foreigners, mm-hmm. It's one of the first things I always tell them: if you're homesick, it is not the time to be making decisions, yeah. or to be really thinking about it too much. Get over your homesickness, yeah. Let the dust settle, and determine, if in fact you think you have a calling from God, yeah. And all of those things, yes, those things could affect a vocation.
Mm-hmm. So, the classic question: what advice would you give to young men who are considering a vocation now? Young men who might listen to Restoration Radio and they're sort of thinking about it, but perhaps don't want to say anything to anybody yet, and certainly not to their family, maybe not even to a priest. Well,
I would say to them, to begin with, that really. Holy Mother Church is in dire need, mm-hmm. And the vocation today is a very special grace, mm-hmm. And requires a special sacrifice. And I would say to them that in these times, when Holy Mother Church is in such great need, we should be willing to make great sacrifices. And unlike the past, the draw of the world today is so strong, is very strong, and there's so much opportunity to be had and money to be made, that the vocation today is more difficult than it would have been in the past. Mm-hmm. There are many distractions, many allurements of the world that pull, and so to have a vocation today and to pursue it requires a special grace and a lot of sacrifice. You have to be willing to give up the world and all of those opportunities, and to give yourself to God. There really isn't in times past, there was a lot of prestige attached to the priestly life, mm-hmm. and that's not there anymore. It doesn't have there's no glamour. It's a life of sacrifice. It's a life of toil, and but at the same time, it's a rewarding life. And there's nothing better than you might say. There's no greater good to be had than peace of soul, mm-hmm. When one has made that sacrifice and given himself to God in that way. There's a peace of soul that the world cannot give, mm-hmm. and And so I say to all young men, now Holy Mother Church is calling out and asking for help. And we should be willing to make those sacrifices. We are in a very special time, like no other time, and therefore the sacrifice we should make should be very great. We should be willing to make these very great sacrifices to give our whole lives to God, to keep the faith lit in the souls of the faithful.
I mean, rather selfishly, from personal experience, I can say that having that nagging doubt in the back of your mind is a horrible thing to live with. And the best way you can get rid of that nagging doubt is by going and trying it. And once you find out one way or another, you suddenly have that peace of soul that you didn't have before. So
Yes.
for young men who may watch this interview, I've been in your position.
Yes, in fact, to all young men out there, I knew Matthew very well. We've had her. I knew Matthew very well.
Father knows me perhaps better than I should.
So, but I commend Matthew for the sacrifice he made, and that he thought it was important that if to determine if he had this calling, and that's a good thing to do. If you have doubts, or if you think there might be something there, it can't hurt.
Even if you just have doubts, even if it's a tiny nagging doubt, that nagging doubt will not go away.
In any case, it's going to be a great experience. It's going to be wonderful for your spiritual life.
Absolutely. Okay, so you sound pretty busy, Father. How does Father Selway relax? Does he have any holidays? And if he does, what does he do during his time off?
Well, being that I am working with schools, right? Working with schools or working with a seminary, we do get the breaks. We do have the Christmas break, we have the Easter break, and normally there's 2 weeks, there's 2 weeks off. During the summer, there's a break. You have a month and a half, to break away from the routine. But I would say this, it's, yes, personally, I don't take a lot of vacation time, at least not now, having started the schools in 2003 and trying to operate the schools requires a lot of time, but it is nice to have those breaks. It gives you time to, you might say, step away a bit and to gear up for the upcoming semester. And the summer likewise. The summer really is spent in getting ready for the next year. And so there's when you're involved with academia, it is nonstop. But at the same time, if it's your vocation, it's something you like to do. So in a certain sense, just like anybody in the business world, you have to break away. You have to make a point of it, and sometimes you have to discipline yourself to break away because it is your vocation. It's something I like to do.
Yeah.
I do like to work in the schools and to in order to develop all of the system of education for the youth. It's always been a point of interest to me, and to continue that development every year to make it better and better. And to also to devise means to help the children to better their spiritual lives. And there's so much to do. So during the break time, you, in a certain sense, can devise better means to do a better job. And so, yes, I take full opportunity of those breaks to further my work.
So I suppose parents who watch this interview, they can take heart from the fact that education is a full-time, permanent,
oh yes,
constant job.
Yes, it is. It's full-time.
And if they feel like they are working all the time, and
Yes.
if they're homeschooling particularly.
Yeah, homeschool. I really, I have great sympathy for those parents who have to homeschool. It's a tremendous task, and you can only do so much.
Yeah.
It's impossible. You can only do so much, even with a full staff of sisters teaching. You can only do so much in the higher levels of education, especially in the high school. It's such a vast field of science. that can be imparted to the children. And so it requires a tremendous amount of time, and it's difficult. But I say to all of them, you might say, persevere, as we mentioned before. It would be better that they had no education whatsoever than send them out to the public schools and lose their souls.
Mm-hmm.
The soul comes first. You only have one soul, so you have to save it.
Okay, Father. Well, thank you very much for speaking to us, and perhaps at some point in the future we'll hear you on the network.
Very good. Very good. Thank you.